Hello, Crazy Hair Day production number 4. Perfect. In this section, you will learn about different kinds of contrast, learn about how different artists use contrast in art and design, trace a bitmap image outline and contour lines, fill the traced lines with black and white colors to make a logo, and add stylized text to the logo. In this lesson, Contrast Overview, you'll learn about contrast and how it's used in different types of artwork and designs. Before continuing with this lesson, gather materials. There's never any listed, it cracks me up. Contrast is the level of difference between art elements. Artists use contrast to make special parts of an artwork stand out more than others. Contrast can also be used to make an artwork more interesting. Let us learn about how contrast can be used with specific art elements. And I just realized I'm taking a test here, so I kind of need to size this and I need to read my questions, don't I? So let's do that so we know what we're looking for. Question number 1, colors that are next to each other on a color wheel have what type of contrast? Strong, value, low, or high? Graphic design is also known as what? Abstract artwork, American realism, value contrast, or visual communication. When you're tracing an image, the 3 main parts of the image you may want to trace are its details, shadows, and cutouts, pigments, differences, highlights. For the difference command to work, what needs to happen? The image needs to contain at least 3 colors. The object needs to be moved to the same layer. The image needs to include text, or 2 overlapping objects need to be selected. Which of the following artists was an influential American photographer? Paul Klee, Wassily Kandinsky, Henry Osawa Tanner, or Gertrude Casabier? I don't really know how to pronounce her name, but that sounded pretty good, that last one. Which of the following is an advantage that the Bezier tool has over other tracing options? The Bezier tool automatically snaps the edges of the tracing to the bitmap edge. The Bezier tool adds colors that match the bitmap image. The Bezier tool makes it easier to draw a series of connected straight or curved lines. The Bezier tool erases any extra unnecessary lines created by other tools. In black figure and red figure pottery, how is the black color created? From the natural color of the clay, with paint, with ink, or with glaze? Henry Osawa Tanner focused his paintings on literary figures, everyday life, landscapes, political figures, as well as biblical and religious subjects. Experienced users of the Bezier tool usually use which technique when tracing an image? Drawing only curved lines, drawing a combination of straight and curved lines, drawing only straight lines, or drawing freehand sketches. Wassily Kandinsky is known for creating what type of artworks? Paintings of balloons, realistic paintings, black figure pottery, or abstract artworks. All right, so that's what we're looking for today. Color. Contrast between colors is based on how different the colors are from each other. Color wheels provide a visual key to which colors have high contrast and which have low contrast. The primary colors on a color wheel have the highest level of contrast. The high contrast created by combinations of primary colors can be used to make a bright and cheerful tone. An image with high contrast colors often has a lot of excitement and energy. High contrast colors are often used in children's books and in cartoons. Colors that are next to each other on a color wheel have lower contrast. An artwork with a low contrast can be used to make a more relaxed, somber, or subdued tone. I remember seeing that. Colors next to each other have a low contrast. Value. The contrast between a color's light and dark values is more subtle than the contrast between colors. Artists use value contrast to make more realistic representations of the way light and shadow falls on different objects. For example, if an artist were painting a piece of fruit like a pear, the pear would look more realistic if it had contrasting values of green. If the pear had a single shade of green, it would look flat. By using several values of green, it would be easier to paint the way light and shadow might fall on the rounded shape of a pear. In the same way, if an artist were painting clouds, the clouds would look more realistic if they were painted with strong contrast between dark gray, light gray, and white values than if the clouds were all one color. The strongly contrasting values would make the clouds look more three-dimensional. Line. Unlike color and value, lines can be contrasted in several different ways. Thin lines contrast with thick lines. Curved lines contrast with straight lines. Black lines contrast with colorful lines. Lines drawn with a pen contrast with paintbrush lines. An artist can use contrasting lines to emphasize a specific part of an artwork. Other elements. Contrast isn't limited to color, value, and line. Contrast is a principle that can be used to organize an artwork's shape, form, space, and texture. A circle next to a square is an example of contrasting shapes. A cube next to a sphere is an example of contrasting forms. A cube next to a... Did I just read that? White space in an advertisement contrasts with the words and images around it. The smooth stone of a statue contrasts with the rough texture of the unfinished stone it was carved out of. In the example image, what art element is contrasting the most strongly? Texture, line, color, or value? Now, for me at first glance, I want to say color, just because of the fact that we have this white contrasting against the color of the coat. But if we look more closely, what we have a lot of in this image is value. Why so? Look at how three-dimensional the cloth is. The three-dimensionality of the cloth is due to the fact that there is such contrast between value. Notice how many different values are in the skirt to create the folds and the deep shadows that you see in those folds, and then the highlights. So, and the same thing is true over here on this fabric. We also see a nice gradient here of value. But we have a nice contrast of this deep shadow with this mid-tone here and this bright highlight. So choose value. There are many different ways to use contrast. Let's learn about some of them. Black figure pottery and red figure pottery. Black figure pottery painting was an ancient Greek style and technique for decorating ceramic pottery vessels such as vases, cups, and bowls. It was popular for hundreds of years, starting as early as the 7th century BCE. The black figures were silhouettes which often showed scenes of people and animals, as well as specific scenes from Greek mythology and history. Geometrical patterns were also used to add decoration. The black figures of the pottery were painted onto the surface of the unhardened clay using a glaze made from a mixture of clay and water. Wasn't that one of those questions? Let's check it out. I know I saw something about black figure pottery in there. In black, number 7. In black figure and red figure pottery, how is the black color created? With glaze. Yay! Details were added to the silhouettes by scratching thin lines in the glaze to show the clay underneath. Let's see what that looks like. Cool. Red and white clay mixtures were used to paint more detail onto the silhouettes, such as clothing, hair, or skin. When the pottery was fired in a kiln, the body of the pottery turned a reddish-brown color, while the glaze turned black. Red figure pottery painting was first developed around the 5th century BCE, and it became more popular than black figure pottery. Red figure painting is the reverse of black figure pottery painting. Instead of using the black glaze for silhouettes, the black was used for painting the background, while red silhouettes were made from the natural color of the clay. The black glaze was then used to add contour lines to the red silhouettes. This made it easier to create more detailed images and designs. Some artists combined black figure and red figure pottery painting on opposite sides of the same vessel. Black figure and red figure pottery paintings are strong examples of how contrast can be used to create a distinctive style. Graphic design is used to create the look of all sorts of things, such as magazine layouts, signs, software icons, web page layouts, and even things like cereal boxes. Graphic design is a collection of techniques used to communicate in a visual way. That's why graphic design is also sometimes called visual communication or communication design. Often the goal of a graphic designer is to present information in as clear a way as possible while designing it to look as visually appealing as possible. Contrast can be an effective tool for making the most important information stand out. For example, a white image on a black background stands out strongly and is easier to notice than a gray image on a darker gray background. Within a paragraph or page of text, a graphic designer might emphasize important words by changing their color, size, or typeface. I know there's a question on graphic design in here. I gotta find it. Graphic design is also known as what? Abstract artwork. Visual communication. Yes. Ding. Visual communication. Checkpoint. Here's an ad for a bicycle. Which of these examples of text would contrast most strongly with the background of the ad to make it easier to read? Which one of these is the easiest? Ooh. Oh. Ooh, I know which one I could read the easiest. For me, it was that one. How about you? Contrast is present in a wide variety of artwork. Let us learn more about specific artists and their use of contrast. Wasily Kandinsky. Wasily Kandinsky was a mid-19th to mid-20th century Russian painter who created the first completely abstract or non-representational artworks. Kandinsky was so inspired by painting that he gave up his career teaching law and economics to enroll in art school at the age of 30. Along with artists such as Franz Marc and Paul Klee, Kandinsky formed an art group called the Blue Rider, or Der Blaue Reiter. In order to justify his expressions of spirituality through the use of artistic abstraction, Kandinsky wrote a treatise called On the Spiritual in Art. In it, he detailed his theories on the spiritual significance of shapes and colors in art. Kandinsky separated his art into two categories. His improvisations were spontaneous, unplanned paintings, while his compositions were planned out well in advance of the painting process. Kandinsky's composition 7 uses strong contrast between light and dark colors, as well as curved and straight lines to create a vibrant and complex image. Even though composition 7 looks wild and uncontrolled, the title of the painting suggests that Kandinsky put a lot of thought and planning into the painting's composition. Repeat after me. Gertrude Bezier. Bezier, yes, we can say that, was one of the most influential American photographers of the early 20th century. Along with Alfred Stieglitz, she helped to popularize photography as an art form. In her portrait of Alfred Stieglitz, Bezier uses strong contrast of light and dark to emphasize Stieglitz. In addition to the value contrast, the undeveloped areas around Stieglitz contrast strongly with the photographic accuracy of his face, hair, and clothes. Bezier uses film developing techniques to create an almost painterly look and feel for the background of the photo. Bezier's exploration of different photography techniques like this to achieve specific artistic expressions helped to legitimize photography as art. Can you believe that at one period of history, those people who were photographers had to fight for their place in the art world? Paul Klee is an early 20th century painter who was born in Switzerland but studied and taught art in Germany. Klee taught art along with Kandinsky at the Bauhaus. Klee taught courses in bookbinding, stained glass, and mural painting until the school was shut down by the Nazi movement in 1933. In his artwork, Klee used strong colors and geometric images to create representational abstract work. In The Red Balloon, the red circle or balloon in the center of the painting contrasts strongly with the yellow and gray colors surrounding it. The circular shape of the balloon contrasts strongly with the rectangles and triangles, which might represent buildings along the edges of the painting. Henry Ossawa Tanner became the first African-American painter to gain international recognition. In 1896, one of his paintings was accepted into the Paris Salon, an annual showcase of art that people traveled from all over Europe to see. His realist paintings focused on everyday life as well as biblical and religious subjects. Tanner's most famous work, The Banjo Lesson, shows an old man teaching a young boy to play the banjo. The shadows at the left and bottom contrast strongly with the light surrounding the man and boy, almost like a spotlight lighting a stage. Though not as realistic as some of his other works, the mood of concentration and focus shines through clearly. Checkpoint. Based on the artwork you've seen in this lesson, who made this artwork? Ooh, was it Paul Klee, Wassily Kandinsky, Gertrude Bezier? I have such a hard time remembering that. And Henry Ossawa Tanner. Okay, so I know Henry Ossawa Tanner was the African-American artist who did just like everyday life portraits. And then Bezier was the one who made photography an art form, and Kandinsky was the one that did all of those crazy abstract, some improvisation and some planned compositions, and then it was Paul Klee that did that balloon painting. So Paul Klee. So it looks like we reached the end of the chapter. Let's see what we've got left here to deal with. We've got, when you're tracing an image, the three main parts of the image that you want to trace are its details, shadows, and gosh, this is going to come from that 4.02. We might have to go back and review that one just to make sure we pick the right answer. For the difference command to work, yep, that's also from 4.02. Which of the following artist was an influential American photographer? Gertrude Bezier. Which of the following is an advantage that the Bezier Tool? So that's going to be in that next unit. In black figure, we already finished. Henry Ossawa Tanner focused his paintings on everyday life, as well as biblical and religious subjects. Experienced users, oh, that's going to be the next unit. And Wassily Kandinsky is known for creating what type of artworks? Abstract artworks. Okay, let's check out 4.02. I know that we did this lesson already in class, but some of the answers that we're looking for are in this unit. So let's try to hunt them down. So what are we looking for here? When you're tracing an image, the three main parts of the image that you want to trace, I think it's going to be the highlights, but it could be something. It could be the differences. So let's find out. And then for the difference command, so we need to learn about the difference command real quick. Advantage of the Bezier tool, and experienced users of Bezier usually use which technique? Okay, let's look. So this is where you get to skim, or if you went back and you were watching that video. Okay, we did that. A logo. Okay, planning your layers. I don't think it's going to be there. tracing. Okay, how the Bezier tool offers a few advantages. It makes it easier to draw a series of connected, straight or curved lines. There's the answer. Perfect. Too bad they don't come in order. An advantage of the Bezier tool: it makes it easier to draw a series of connected straight lines or curved lines. Okay, perfect. We got that one. And then we have difference command, 3 parts that you want to trace. There's one more. Where is it? Okay, experienced users of the Bezier tool. Drawing with the mouse can be difficult to draw straight lines using the pencil and calligraphy tools. The Bezier tool keeps drawing a line until you're done. That means that you can do other things. Sometimes zooming in. When you trace bitmap image, you trace lines that have as much color or little details as you want. The trace image doesn't have to match the bitmap image. Simple shapes, lines. The Bezier tool can be difficult to use at first, but with practice it can become much easier. It's an important tool used by digital artists. Okay. Dun dun dun. Okay. Not seeing the answer there. There are 3 different parts of an image that you may want to trace. So here they are. The details, the highlights, yay, that's what it was, the highlights, good, and the shadows. So let's go and mark that one. Okay, when you're tracing an image, the 3 main parts that you want to trace are the details, the shadows, and the highlights. Woohoo! Okay, what are we still looking for? The difference command and experienced users of the Bezier tool. Dun, dun, dun. The same way that you use a pair of scissors to cut out shapes, you can use Inkscape to cut out shapes. Dun, dun, dun. Keep going. The difference command lets you cut shapes from an object. Let's see, was that the answer we were looking for? What needs to happen? For the difference command to work, 2 overlapping objects need to be selected. 2 overlapping objects need to be selected. Boom! There we go. Got that answer. So I think we have all but the one. Experienced users of the Bezier tool. Well, it's one that I missed there. I'm going to probably figure out what it is here, though. Experienced users of the Bezier tool, usually which technique? Drawing only curved lines, drawing a combination of straight and curved lines is the correct answer, ladies and gentlemen. And that concludes the Unit 4 test. Make sure that at the bottom you save your responses and then submit your responses. Have a lovely day.